All right, so now that I'm soaked with sweat, let's give some final thoughts on the V44X Bowie, or just large Bowie versus large hatchet. So I had this Bowie, this is my Bowie, that's why we picked this. It's about 1.8 pounds. This is also 1.8 pounds. The lengths, they're very close. Y'all can see that. Yes, it's longer this way, but that one also sticks out farther horizontally. So they're very close to the same length. This is blade heavy. Like if I hold each of them here, I could definitely do this longer than do this. One thing with the machete Bowie knife, when you swing down, I can decelerate that a lot quicker. So I can control it easier. This one, if I swing it hard, it's a lot harder to stop that once it's in motion. So that's more fatiguing. You gotta be a little more accurate. You get tired because the weight's out here. This blade has more length, so the spot hitting something, more the blade hits, so that's more surface area. So this will cut deeper in some situations and take bigger chunks out, more weight in a more concentrated spot. So what I had to do when I was chopping with this on a bigger log, I have to hit some here, hit some there, hit some there. That way the whole blade isn't chopping and you just aren't getting like the depth like you would want. So with this, one thing that I didn't like with the Adler, and I don't have a ton of experience with higher end hatchets, but I do have some experience with hatchets and Bowies and machetes and bigger axes. I would like to see a bigger ramp there. I just find, I do like this end piece. It does help you decelerate and hit your palms on that, but it needs to be more of a ramp here to keep your hand from sliding off. I was finding that was happening some. There is some traction on there, but I just think a different shape handle would help a lot. I don't know why they didn't do that. That's one reason why I have this back piece here, is so when you chop, this hits on that meaty part of your hand and it stops the knife. So I think that's important for choppers. So the benefits, what do I see as the benefits of a Bowie? So the benefits of a Bowie, you can stab something, self-defense, animals, it's a little faster. You can definitely stab into stuff. You have a point you can do stuff with. Do like an awl, poke holes and things. You could stab with this. I didn't do a ton of stabbing tests. I thought about getting into a tire and like stabbing like this or chopping. But I can tell you guys from when I had to finish a deer off one time, and their layered hair is almost like an armor. Like you cut into it and it just cuts through the hair and barely gets into the skin. So I did that with a sharp tomahawk before and hit into the deer in its neck. And I thought about mounting it. It was a nice deer, but it did not even cut past the skin. So I dropped the tomahawk, I pulled out a knife, stabbed it in its neck, and then cut the rest of the way around to finish the deer off. So you're not gonna be able to get penetration on this like you would a knife unless you hit a hard spot, like where it's, bone behind the flesh, like into a skull. But that would happen the same thing with the knife too. Probably have a harder time stabbing, but pounds per square inch, you should be able to get into the skull easier with a knife. But if you're trying to kill an animal, a hatchet, you're not going to get past their thick hair and skin hitting like somewhere meaty, like a shoulder, or somewhere where you're not hitting on bone. You're definitely going to want to hit where there's hard backing, like a skull behind it. So if you're trying to get penetration, you can go into a gut or a shoulder or something with a knife. You can't do that with a hatchet. So benefits, it's light. I think you can get a lot more machete stuff done with a similar type Bowie. There are larger and smaller Bowies and larger and smaller knives. So you can do a little bit more fine work on that tip, but like we saw with the feather sticking, you can feather stick with a hatchet. It's the first time I had ever done it, but if you get that edge right, it will do it. Now both of these knives I had sharp enough to cut a paper towel roll. I had a harder time getting this one really sharp. I'm guessing the heat treat is not quite as hard as the Bowie. So I don't know about carving stuff. Like if I was trying to do like notches, you may need a little baton to do like notches. I could see notching being harder. I didn't try that. If somebody else you want to do that, feel free. I think that I'm done with this for the most part, unless you guys, come up with something for me to do. So benefits: stabbing, machete stuff, brush clearing. This definitely goes through cleaner, through green brush, stuff like this. Hatchet doesn't really do that as much. You can probably still do some hammering. I've seen a ton of hammer marks on World War II knives, Bowies, where they're hammering on the back. So you can do some hammering. I don't think I'd get anything really crazy, with hammering on the back. Especially hard stuff, you could break it. It's a kind of a sensitive spot on a knife. Let's see, benefits. So I think a benefit with this, I think you could do more overall in the woods with this. And I think if you are going bigger than this, like if you're trying to fell a tree or build a large shelter, I think you can build a shelter with either one of these. And just about as easy. Because even with a shelter, you got to do small stuff for small branches for things. But I think you can build a shelter. Now for a larger tree, I think you have to get an axe. A chainsaw, an axe, a saw, like a two-person saw, and even some of those silky saws. I'm not even going to talk about silky saws. I know they exist, and I know they're lighter. You can pair all types of things. You can pair a ton of different stuff. I'm not getting into saws. Maybe later. So let's talk about the benefits of the hatchet. All right, benefits of the hatchet. I think this chopped deeper into the logs that are large diameter logs. I definitely saw bigger chunks coming out initially. I think it was a little harder to kind of square things off, but it could just be me. One thing I didn't do, I think two-handed. I did this the other day off camera. I think you can definitely hit like two-handed and get the most out of that force, most out of that, weight, the weighted end, the weight forward. I think you can get more out of that, really two-handing a hatchet. I did that the other day. I finished off that log I was cutting. So I think you can get two hands. I think that will be pretty useful. You can get a lot of good cutting with that. Hammering. This has a flat piece in the back. So hammering tent stakes, hammering batons, smashing stuff up. I think that's a good benefit. You can replace the handle. I don't know if, maybe a tomahawk. I don't know if replacing a handle like this is something you can do in the woods. Maybe if you're really skilled and you have the extra pieces, yeah, you probably could. So that's the benefits I think of this. Heavy chopping and probably two-handed stuff. Now I don't think I would get a lot more out of doing a two-handed chop with this. The weight's just more evenly distributed. I just don't think you're gonna get as much out of it as you would with a hatchet. So I may have forgot some stuff. I think if I had to pick what I was gonna have with me overnight, especially in the woods by myself, I'm probably going with this. I think my chances of doing smaller brush, smaller trees, I'm just going with the Bowie. I don't think I have to worry about as much larger stuff because I'm not gonna be building a log cabin, but you never know. It's also preference. What do you want to bring? What do you feel like carrying? So I'm going with the Bowie still, but I've just gotten into hatchets, like higher end stuff, stuff that costs like more than 30 bucks. This was about 90 bucks. I would like to try a hatchet that maybe has a different shaped head. I think this is a good shape. I think it's a good, universal. I would like to see a more, a steeper bird's beak at the pommel. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I gotta download these and split some of these videos up into parts. And this is gonna be my conclusion video. And I know there's a ton of pairings. You can get this with a small knife, a carving knife. You can get this with a small carving knife. You can do a silky saw and this and a knife. Same thing. This was specific to similar weights. And the reason I picked these is because they are similar weights. So if you're gonna be sticking this in your backpack or on your side and carrying them for a while, I think it's only fair to make them similar weights and lengths. Because you can add a foot to this and this is gonna be a better chopper. But I do like the defensive part of this. If you had to do longer term brush clearing, like you're cutting paths, definitely this. This is not really for doing that. You're gonna get worn out really quick. I'm chopping a big log. This wins. I don't think you're gaining anything using 2 hands on this, minus maybe like stabbing. I did stab this in a log a few times, kind of like this. So I think you can do that. You could definitely hit, maybe at an angle like that. I didn't get into throwing. You can throw either one. The bird's beak on this, the ramp, definitely makes it harder because it spins out of your hand faster, because it tumbles over. This will probably do pretty good for throwing, is that that bird's beak is gone. So that's pretty much it. And again, I welcome you guys to critique me, link videos in the comments, share your thoughts in the comments, and all of that. I'm not against information. If you have suggestions for people on better hatchets, drop them in. Better budgets, something that costs more. This was like $230, and this was $100. Sorry, but I'm not going out and spending $250 on a hatchet. Would the test have been a little different? Maybe. But this is what I'm doing it with. So maybe if you want to do your own test and pick 2 different knives, try that out. One last thing, fall, winter this year, it's looking like we're going to get another V44X drop in SK85. That's what this is. This is 5mm. The next drop should be like 5.5 or 5.8 millimeter. So not a ton enough to really notice a lot, but it's going to be a little bit more heavy duty. You guys have a good one. Be safe. I'll cover something safety wise. Probably wasn't a good idea to leave this on the ground with the blade tip up and exposed. You start walking around this stuff, especially when you're tired. It doesn't take much to trip into this with your foot and end up in the emergency room. And if I was out in the wild with no emergency room, you just become injured, get infected, have to do some field med stuff. So be safe. Pick up your tools. Somebody else would come by too. I knew all my kids were inside, but somebody else would come by not knowing your knife is laying out, and they could impale their foot or fall on it. So I didn't do it. I should have. So you guys have a good one. Hope you enjoyed it. Be safe. Tomorrow is the 4th of July. Hope there's no bio attacks. There were some rumblings of that happening July 4th as kind of like a blowback from the Iran-Israel thing. Hopefully it doesn't happen. I want everybody to be safe, healthy, and happy, and live a long time. So if I don't talk to you guys, happy Independence Day. Don't forget why you're free and why we are still free. And that's all I got. Later.